Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Jonquil Baugh on the podcast. Did I get it right first off?
Hey, first time.
All right, I got it right the first time, everyone. So, this podcast is going to get off to a good start. She's an IFBB Pro Women's Physique Division. She's also coming to us from Kansas City, which we're doing this a day ahead of the AFC Championship game, and this will be released maybe a few weeks afterwards. So, there might be hope there. We might be celebrating a Super Bowl by the time this podcast comes out. Who knows? But I like the excitement, and she also owns JQ. She's a lifestyle coach as well as a certified nutritionist and an LMT. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Thank you so much for coming on.
I so appreciate being on.
Well, I really appreciate that too, but now I got to ask, what's the weather like in Kansas City today?
Cold.
How cold?
Enough for there to be ice.
So we talking like 30 degrees or?
A little bit colder. A little smidgen colder. Yes, I know, and I know that's nothing for some, but for us, we have to wear some gloves and some hats and some scarves. That's cold.
It is 5 degrees where I'm in Minnesota, and it is negative 19 wind chill. So, yeah, I was going to go sledding with friends today because we hadn't done that, and we just got a big snowstorm last night. But yeah, that is definitely not going to happen just because it is just way too, and it's not looking, and then the high tomorrow is 0, probably with like a negative 30-degree wind chill. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to enjoy my weekend being outside for sure. So, no, it's a never-ending pit of misery basically from now until April. It's just horrible. But before I depress everyone with my winter woes, because they are vast, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to you becoming a bodybuilder?
Well, I was always an athlete, and I had, in my youth, thought that I would make it as a career. And to be a pure athlete, you have to be excellent. You have to be superior specimen, and I was just good enough. And so I realized that I needed to look at some other options. And I thought about, educating and inspiring and motivating others. And I sort of began my fitness journey that way. And it became a passion just because to help others reach their potential fills me with joy every single time that happens. And it keeps motivating me to continue to reach for my potential. And so I started pretty young. I was about 21 when I started my business. I was track and field in my teens, did some boxing, some martial arts, and realized that lifting weights was just empowering. And physically, I saw myself change. So the more I lifted, the more my body changed. I liked what I saw. I liked being strong. And so it just continued from there.
Well, you found out that you might not have been an athletic specimen, but you definitely are a genetic specimen. So, that really just, you found either way. When one door closes, another one opens. And yeah, we hear that story all the time, but I always love to ask because if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, their workouts that they do, their exercises, how many reps they do, what exercises, the food that they eat. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. And I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what did you train for that body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you. What was that like for you, sort of figuring out what worked best for your body? Because like I said, it's just a big trial and error process.
There are infinite possibilities. But the beauty of it is if you enjoy it, then it's not work. So, when you start in your 20s, you basically just begin experimenting. You find things that you like. You watch others in the gym. You just start, you start the learning curve. And when you enjoy it, it's just fun to experiment with all these different ways. And whether it's sets, whether it's reps, whether it's exercises, whether it's food, nutrition, all the different types of cardio that you can do, doing it all and finding out what works for you is the journey itself. That's what's fun about it.
I've always said you sort of become like a mad scientist where you just got to concoct your own potion and figure out what works best. And I mean, some people can get it more earlier on, but some people it takes a long time. And it also has to be ever evolving. If you do the same workouts, day in and day out, after a while, you're going to get stale because you're going to your muscles are just going to get used to it. So it's always a never ending process. But I always love to ask this because I mean, I mentioned genetics before, and I always love to bring this up because so many people, especially in this day and age with technology and, constantly viewing other people through, Instagram or Facebook, they always say like, oh, if they're talking about a fitness trainer, they always say, oh, I want his arms or her abs, or I just want that. They don't realize that you are not that person. You don't have their genetics. I mean, you can just be the best version of yourself. But going off of that, I mean, everyone always has that one body part when they get started in the gym that really, really takes off, that they don't have to train as much. And then everyone has that one body part that just lags behind, that they just have to train into oblivion. I mean, I'll give you mine first. My back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of loading and lifting, boxes into trucks. I worked in a lot of warehouses. So you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are basically the two options that were presented to you. I'm 6'3", so my legs and my lower body are just absolutely shot, where I mean, I have to train them into oblivion just to get it to look like any semblance like I work them. I mean, I still have people at my gym that I go to that still say, oh, hey, Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year? And it's like, dude, you saw me work legs yesterday. So it's a never ending joke. But what were those body parts for you when you got started?
Um, I never used to train legs, and the reason the reason being was, as a sprinter, they were pretty developed, and us girls sometimes, we have issues with our legs, and I've always wanted to wear those nice tight jeans and feel good about my legs, and they were always so muscular, and so I thought, you know what, I won't train them. That's the answer to all my problems. Well, no, it's not. So they responded well. I was lucky. But I think that's probably genetics and probably because of the sprinting training that I had for so long. The other body part that's tending to be a little tricky is my back. It's super strong, but it doesn't necessarily develop the way that I want it to develop. So that's been a little challenging.
So what have you had to do to get it to develop the way that you want to? Is it just a lot of mixing up workouts and just trying different things?
I'm still working on that, by the way.
Oh,
So
well, yeah. Well, everything's a work in progress. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah.
I haven't found the magic formula, but I'm trying. I used to just work it once, then I started working it twice, and I thought, okay, let's go to 3 times now. Then I realized that more is not always better. So then I backed that off. Then I added just basically, I did a whole season of pull-ups, different grips, and then I added weight to those pull-ups. I mean, you name it, I've gone there. So as you say, it's an evolution. It's a process.
You
So
might be the first guest that's come on and said that pull-ups didn't work for them when it came to developing a really good back. That's like almost the go-to that everyone talks about. So, and that's why I love asking that question.
it made my back strong. It doesn't, but it just didn't necessarily create the look that I
Yeah.
was looking for.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's why I love asking that question because so many people have so many different things. I mean, we've heard so many different body parts that took off for people, and it's just it goes down to your genetics, and it just goes down to other factors as well. I mean, I always said calves were my least favorite just because I could inject pure muscle into my calves, and they wouldn't even grow an ounce. I mean, they're just for me. I mean, you're either born with them or you're born without them. I think that actually might be the most genetic thing out there. But a training technique that I love to talk about because I was aware of it and I used it a little bit before I started this podcast, but then after so many guests were just, preaching about it, I decided, use it a lot more. And it's worked out a lot is time under tension. Do you use a lot of time under tension in your training?
I do. Cadence work is key. So super slow reps, adding bands to the exercises that you're doing, changing that type of tension. So again, dumbbell work versus cable work. All those types of tension will create different stresses on the muscle. So absolutely, yeah.
I've always said that has been one of the game changers for me, but I always love to talk about first prep stories because I always find it funny that the general public doesn't realize that just to be able to get into shape to go on a prep, you have to be in, a tremendous amount of shape that 99% of the general public would not be able to achieve. But going on a prep, I mean, you are notching things up to an extreme where, I mean, your diet has to be perfect. You have to get all of your workouts in. Everything just becomes so scientific. What was that like when you first did a prep and you first really got a taste of the lifestyle? And how has that evolved as your career's gone on?
My first prep is probably like my first love. It was my favorite. Um, good memories. It was actually the easiest of preps for me. Um, I had trained for a couple of years to get into the shape I needed to. So um, preps have evolved. They become more complicated. They have become more scientific. They have become more challenging because every time you're tweaking, you're refining. And my first prep, I had no expectations, none at all. So it was so much fun. I didn't have to compare myself to my best self last time. And once you've done your first prep, everything changes because now you have a comparison. And now you have to build on that and be better, get better, strive continuously to improve upon last prep. So, absolutely.
I found that answer to be so funny because we do have a lot of people that saying like, yeah, I miss my first prep because like you said, you don't have that expectation. You're not comparing yourself. So I think a lot of people should really just enjoy that. If they plan on being a long time competitor, you really should just enjoy that first prep because from all the stories that we've heard, it seems like it is going to be one of the most fun or the most enjoyable ones to have. But what would you say was probably the biggest nutritional change that you made when you started really taking this life seriously?
Um, I started living the keto lifestyle um, about 7 years ago, and that was simply to deal with some health issues, specifically migraines, and it really worked. And I since then modified that, of course. But that was a major change for me, just being a carb addict. So huge change there. That evolved into intermittent fasting, and so now I just sort of implement as many different fasting techniques as I can, whether it be 72 hours, 24-hour fast twice a week, the 16-hour, 8-hour window. Any of those are awesome to work with. And then lastly, carb cycling. So putting all those three together, I think really worked for me.
Well, and I always say we've had a lot of ketogenic diet people come on, and what would you say is probably the biggest myth that the general public has about the ketogenic diet? Because there are a lot that I love to dispel.
Yeah, that's like it's like the Atkins diet. It's not. A lot of times, too, people think that they're on keto when their protein intake is super, super high. So, yeah, the carbs are low, their fats are high, but their protein's also super high. And the keto diet is not, it's a moderate protein intake. And I find that with the keto diet, it's all about mixing your fats and making sure that you have sufficient good fats. When Atkins came out, that just was not the focus at all. It was any fat that you could ingest, as much of it as possible. So,
Yeah, that's one that we hear a lot, and then another one is like, "Oh, it's not sustainable." But yeah, we've had people that have done it for years upon years, and they're still doing it. So I highly recommend before you even think. But again, if you think about trying keto, highly recommend looking it up and figuring out all about it because especially in this day and age, so many people just jump into things without really doing their research. So I definitely recommend looking into that. But I mean, probably the number one thing that I was most shocked by this podcast, if you would have asked me before I started it, I would have never guessed that this is for a lot of compares the hardest thing for them is the posing. I mean, we've heard so many stories on this podcast where it's harder than working out. It's harder than your nutrition. I mean, I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
well, what you don't know, you don't know. So, when I initially started posing, um, I felt like I had it, because I didn't know that I didn't know how to pose. But then, of course, you realize that there is an art to it and a skill level to it. And I ended up hiring a wonderful posing coach for a season, and she taught me so much. And now I realize how little I know and how hard it is to not only pose but pose correctly for your physique. And that's where I think people are a little misguided. Is that side chest pose. there are so many ways that you can tweak that to make it work for your physique. And by just copying someone else, that doesn't mean that you're going to look your best. So having someone help you figure that out and pinpoint how your body is different from someone else's. And so I'm very somewhat tall for the physique category, being 5'9". So posing like someone who's 5'3" does not work for me. And actually, most of my competitors are shorter than I am. So
We've heard that so many times that so many people just look at what the champion pose like, and then they just try to copy that, and they don't realize, their body is completely different than yours. That they find ways to make it look better. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And were you always in physique division, or did you start out at a lower division and work your way up?
always, always a physique. And, yeah, I really, when I started getting interested in bodybuilding, there were two divisions available: figure and bodybuilding. That was it. Bikini and physique were not weren't created yet. So when I hit 40, fortunately for me, physique division had just begun. I knew that I did not have the level of commitment for bodybuilding. So it was perfect.
She's over 40 years old and she has arms like that. I got to go hit the gym right after I'm done talking to her. Jesus, everyone, this is just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, that is so great. But out of your physique poses, what is your favorite pose to do and what is your least favorite pose to do?
Um, I I definitely love side chest. Um, Probably my least favorite is front double bi because it exposes all of your weaknesses. You cannot hide anything. So,
We're gonna just prove we're gonna just prove this. Can you give us a front double bi right now?
yes, well, the double bi is
Yeah,
fine, but it's
yeah.
a rep, right?
I was gonna say, I think everything checks out to me. Yeah, I know you are like our third ever guest that has ever said front double bi is their least favorite pose. So I was like, okay, I got to make sure that like maybe her arm is like cut in three places or something like that. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah. But what was the?
I'm not going to point them out to you. If you can't see them,
Oh,
we'll just say that
absolutely,
they're
yeah. Well, I couldn't see any flaws. So everyone, all the judges out there, she's checked by me. She's verified by DD on the spot. She's good to go. So yeah, I mean, I always say like abs and thighs are probably our number one that we hear all the time because it's kind of such an awkward pose where it's really hard to do it right. But I mean, here's a fun question because as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people that you ever meet in your entire life. I mean, just my thick Norwegian skin, I can't go out in the sunlight without an SPF of 1 million, otherwise I'll get burnt to an absolute crisp. But I always say, it's just I'm never going to be a tan person, and bodybuilders get tan for a show. So I always love to ask because we hear so many stories on here of bodybuilders saying that you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that feeling like when you get that tan on and you realize like, hey, all this hard work, you're finally able to see all the results and all the cuts that you might not have saw before then?
um, we are judging ourselves every single day, morning, noon, night, and we get so wrapped up in the details, and we stop seeing improvement. Um, when you look too closely, um, things start to blur out, and it's a wonderful thing when we finally get our last tan. Is suddenly everything comes to light, and you finally see the results of your hard work. So it's an awesome feeling because we don't until that point. We're just so caught up in the minute details, and we're also pretty hard on ourselves when we're our own worst critics that we stop seeing the improvements. So yeah, it's an awesome feeling when we get our last tan.
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine. Well, the only negative with that is that, I mean, you can't really sit on anything. You can't really lean against anything. You basically become a human statue. I mean, believe me, we've heard so many stories where you got to bring your own bed sheets. I mean, I always say it. There's a list of things that bodybuilders have to go through that people don't understand, and that is like 10% of it. Just all the hassles that go along with competing. But I mean, I always love to ask this question because for my bands, I ask, what is that feeling like when you get to walk up on stage and perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders. What is that feeling like when you get to walk up on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months, if not years on?
There is a moment of relief when you're finally up there. Um, towards the end, especially peak week, you're just ready for it to be over. And so getting up there, I'm always thinking that I'm going to be so nervous. And I get up there, and it's it's so natural to be up there and showcasing your hard work and knowing that the fans and the audience appreciate sort of what you've done, and you just get to enjoy it. You finally get to enjoy all of the pain and the tears and the suffering that you've been through for the last 3, 4, 5 months, whatever. And so it's your time to shine, and you got to have fun with it. And yeah, I don't know if everyone does, but that should be our goal.
Absolutely, because I mean, I always say the one weird thing is that I mean, the bands that I have on, they're on stage for up to like 2 hours, but bodybuilders, you got a minute sometimes, or even less, or sometimes a little bit more. But it's still just the amount of dedication and hard work that you put into just to be on stage that little amount of time. I mean, that just shows how dedicated these competitors are, and just what they go through. But when you're on stage, does time really seem to slow down, or does it seem to speed up, or is it sort of a mixture?
It's a mixture. It really is. Half the time, I don't know what I've actually done. So um, we'll go on, and then we'll come off, and I'm like, what just happened? And then there are other times when you're up there and the judges are asking you to hold your pose, and they seem to be taking forever to make their decisions, and you think that time is just slowed down, and you think that you're up there for 10 minutes, but it's 10 seconds. So, yeah.
Do you ever think that sometimes the judges are just trying to see like who could maybe last the longest in that pose, or because I don't know. Sometimes when I've seen videos where they make them wait, like 2 or 3 minutes. It's like, come on, like what do you really need to like look at every single minute detail, like down to the tenth of a centimeter of an inch. So yeah, I don't know, but I've always seen that, and I was like, let these people rest for God's sake. I mean, they've done enough. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to think that the judges have such a sadistic streak.
Well,
Um,
the thing is, that would be me. So I always got to think like that. I'd be like, okay, hold it for 50 minutes, and then we'll see. We'll see who lasts the longest. That's the really condition. No, but yeah, I am not accusing anyone of anything. But I've always said, in the back of your minds, that's one of those things where you're thinking like maybe, but 99.99%, I am sure that they are not. But I mean, you're a pro, and I always love to ask all the pros that come on the show, because for anyone out there that doesn't realize, I mean, for a lot of these athletes, getting your pro card is the highlight of your career, just because it's that affirmation that all that hard work that you've put in has paid off, and you can compete in pro shows now. So I always ask, what was that feeling like when they called your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now?
um, Sometimes you set yourself these goals, whether they were realistic or not. But I had wanted to get my pro card within the first year of competing, and so it was very much for me just a pat on my back from myself, not from anybody else. Because when you set yourself a goal and you follow through and you commit, and then you are successful, there's nothing better. There's no better feeling. So internally, you're saying, good job well done. And then the other side of it is you just can't believe that you actually did it, and it's just a whirlwind, and you don't even really take it seriously until you've had time to process, and then you realize the work has just begun. Getting your pro card is wonderful, but it means now the hard stuff is yet to come. And that's what I think surprises a lot of us, is that we think that we've worked hard to get our pro card, but we don't realize what is yet to come, and that we have to climb that ladder all over again, and that we are up against incredible athletes. So yeah, it was kind of it brought me down to earth, back down to earth, and it's like, okay, I've got to go back to the drawing board, start from square one, and here we go again.
It's just like I sort of like to say, it's like going from being the hot shot in middle school to the freshman in high school, basically, where you become the little fish in the big pond. So yeah, but I mean, I always love hearing those stories. But what is your go-to post show meal? What do you crave the most after a show?
For me, it's filet, mac and cheese, and key lime pie. Those are my go-to.
Making me drool on the podcast. That's why I hate asking that question. I mean, I always said if I ever competed, I would just rent out a Five Guys with like $1,000 and just say, "Hey, I'm buying you out for the night. You're going to feed me until I pass out or die. But either way, I'm getting my money's worth." But that sort of leads me into one of my favorite questions to ask, because there's always the public is always so uninformed when it comes to bodybuilding, where so many people don't realize that look that you guys put on stage, that is not a sustainable look. I mean, we've heard that so many times that people are just like, "Oh, I want to look like them," but it's like you don't realize that look is for one day. And because you guys have manipulated your body through all the working out and through all the dieting, I mean, you're not going to be able to maintain that. What was that like for you when you first learned that? And how has that evolved as your career has gone on? Have you been able to accept that better? The fact that, this look that I present on stage, it's going to be the best that I'm going to look for a while until my next show.
You're absolutely right. Very much a challenge. And I'm still working on becoming 100% okay with that. Prior starting bodybuilding, I was accustomed to being conditioned and athletic all year round. And I have to put sort of the brakes on that a little bit and allow myself the leeway to grow. And in order for you to have substantial growth, you have to allow yourself to physically change. And that means, you're not going to be that lean, shredded machine that you've strived so hard to be. But our health is also a priority. And I know that if we don't let ourselves relax and step back from that stage physique, it's not worth it. So the off season allows us to get back our health and kind of give our body the TLC that it needs and rebalance our hormones and emotionally decompress. And I think that's so important. And I've realized the importance more and more each and every prep. So I go into off season with a far more positive mindset now, knowing that if I have a better off season, I'll have a better prep. And my body deserves that. So
I've always said it's sort of like starting your own business where you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, those two just go hand in hand. But a pair of questions that I love to ask all the health and fitness guests that I have on, because there were so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out and getting bigger and stronger. The one negative thing is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water or anything that's sealed on tight. You're the go-to strength person. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next 2 months before I move out. And every single time that they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carry in the groceries, being the good son that I am. Has that been a similar experience with you where people just take one look at you and they assume that you can do favors for them?
No, I have to say, not so much. And perhaps it's because I'm a girl. I don't know. But what they tend to assume is that you are automatically good at it, at everything. So they'll assume, you're good at bowling, or you're a great volleyball player, or, that somehow having this physique allows you to be, a super athlete. And I'm certainly not. My hand coordination is pretty pathetic. But
I was going to say that. I was going to say that physique with volleyball. That's not going to end. That's not going to end well. Usually, yeah.
Does it? And then they also tend to assume that you are stronger than you are. Yeah, just because you have this physique doesn't actually mean that you are strong. I mean, there are plenty of strong women who are small and compact, so we give this illusion that we are a superhero.
Yep. I mean, well, again, she has the best of both worlds, where she can look like that and she doesn't get expected to help people move. I mean, I always said, even if I had zero muscle at all, I'd still get asked all the time because of my height. But yeah, and that's awesome. But yeah, like you said, that brings up another myth that I love to bust is, people don't know how to differentiate powerlifters from bodybuilders. because a lot of times they see bodybuilders and like you said, they just assume that they're just the strongest people on the planet, but they don't realize that you're training for the aesthetic look. I mean, granted, you are vastly stronger than the average person, but still, I mean, we've had powerlifters on the show where, I mean, they don't look like they've ever worked out a day in their life when they come on. And then next thing you know, they're benching like 500 pounds and you're like, okay, I guess they can. So that's a big part of the illusion too. And I love that you brought that up because so many people, yeah, they have that assumption. Then when they see bodybuilders like, oh, they're only benching that much or lifting that much, where it's like, no, yeah, that's for the aesthetic. So I love to bring that up. But you're also, let's be honest, you're not the average looking woman. I mean, especially if you walk out in public dressed like you are right now, I mean, you are going to get stares. I always like to sort of compare it to being like a mini celebrity where, I mean, just human nature, when they see something that is out of the norm, just to stare. What has that been like? And has it gotten easier as your life has gone on to adjust to the fact that, hey, I am going to be an abnormal fixture for a lot of people if I walk out in public?
Uh, it depends. Some of it can be negative and some of it can be positive. Um, Granted, for me, most of it has been positive. It really has. I mean, I'm lucky. I own my own gym, and so my reputation precedes me, and my members know who I am. So I'm not a nameless face, and so I get a lot of support from my members and my clients. Um, I don't know if that's the case with every female bodybuilder. I think that's why a lot of female bodybuilders stay within their circle because it's where their comfort zone is, and they're not judged. So my sympathies go out to those who get harshly judged. But I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky.
Well, and that's awesome. And we have found that, it has gotten better, especially, as the years have gone on. I think people are starting to accept it a lot more. And I really, really think that is a great thing because, yeah, it's like, you're just athletes. I mean, what's the problem with it? And I always said it's so funny how, if you were to fat shame someone who's overweight, the public would just outcry. But even still nowadays, sometimes if you were to say like, oh, she looks too muscular or whatever like that, there's no backlash. I mean, you wouldn't get anything where it's like, so you can make fun of someone for working out and taking care of themselves, but if someone just lets themselves go and you make fun of them, you're the worst person of all time. And you're just, I always found that so fascinating. But the second question of the two questions that I really like to ask every health and fitness guest is, I mean, let's be honest, with guys, clothing options can be limited when you're a bodybuilder, but with women, it is vastly worse when it comes to your clothing options. I mean, I always say if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that. I mean, and you basically have to have two wardrobes, your prep wardrobe and your off-season wardrobe. What are some tips and tricks that you like to do in order to get your wardrobe right? Because, I mean, it must be very hard to find clothes that fit you.
Stretch is the fabric that you want. You want fabrics that kind of go with you as you grow. And a lot of the athletic wear now with the yoga pants and things like that, they allow for that, and they're very fashionable and they have lots of fun designs. So I find that I can take one pair of yoga pants and it can transition me through the entire off season. And then sleeveless. Sleeveless is great.
Well, plus you got to show off the guns too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you can't go. You got to. I mean, if you work that hard, you don't want to go sleeves. Are you kidding me? It's like that's just ridiculous. That's like putting a mattress, or that's like putting a blanket over the Mona Lisa, basically. So it's like come on, everyone. That's just ridiculous. But yeah, sleeves. Yeah, I don't. Granted, if you're up in Minnesota, you have to have sleeves, though. I will add that part, though. Yeah.
But you dress in layers so that you can take the layers off, so that you end up with sleeveless. So
I always like this time of the year because, especially if you go to bars and stuff, everyone's all covered up. So it's and if you maybe go home with someone, it's a mystery. You're like, oh, what's it gonna be? So it's I like playing games like that. It's always, it adds a little bit more fun to this dreary existence in this weather out there. So yeah, I mean, I always said if anyone ever invented proper clothes for both bodybuilders, female and male, I mean, they would make so much money. Just invent jeans that you can just adjust or something like that. They would make so much money. But the number one myth and stereotype that I love to bust on this podcast, and I ask this to every single guest because I find it so important, and I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there's still so many women who unfortunately have that fear where if they walk into the gym and they touch one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I always say to that, I will spend my entire life savings just to talk to you for 5 minutes then because you have found the secret that me and so many people are looking for. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, being that you're also, you know, a nutritionist, a lifestyle coach, I can guarantee you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
For me, there's no downside to having muscle, even if it means that you have to, wear a size bigger. That to me is a non-issue. But you're right. My clients, different story. And sometimes it takes months and months of gentle persuasion to finally help a client accept that they're full-bodied individuals, and to make that full-bodied physique look fit and conditioned means that they have to become more muscular. Instead of trying to get smaller and skinnier, we need to go the other route. Um, but you have to be very gentle with them, and they almost have to come to that decision themselves. You can't force it on them, because if not, if you force it on them, they won't adhere to the lifestyle. So, as a trainer, nutritionist, as a coach, you just find ways to make it more palatable for them. And then also, if they're getting stronger and they're getting faster and they have, they're more agile, and uh, all of that helps them. So,
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I always say it's just it's so untrue, but it has been getting better. So at least there's that. But the one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than men in the gym is, I mean, that confidence boost that I always love to talk about, because we've heard hundreds of stories of, women who have made that change in their life, and just with that confidence boost too, they're maybe a little bit more assertive, or they've just made life changing decisions. How have you taken that confidence boost and used it to impact your life in a positive way?
well, I think the journey that I've sort of been going through, all my members have been watching, and I'm very confident within my own environment, and taking that to the stage is a whole nother ball game. And so that was definitely out of my comfort zone. And just being able to wear a bikini uh, and parade yourself on stage in front of mostly male judges, by the way, it takes a great deal of confidence. And that has really been a big part of this journey for me, just to get on stage, feel comfortable, and be vulnerable out there, and be pulled apart by the judges. And then to take that criticism, constructive criticism, and then be able to transform that into self improvement has been huge. Yeah.
I mean, and that's such a great way to look at it. And I mean, just yeah, in this sport, you're always going to be doubting yourself too. I've always found that it's so much more mental than it is physical. I mean, you can convince your body to work out, but I mean, just that whole mental aspect is just so important that a lot of people don't realize that before they get started competing, that they need to be right mentally, and you need to be accepting the fact that, I mean, it is going to get so much harder for your mind than it would for your body. So that's one thing that I would recommend. But I mean, I always love to ask this: if you could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, what would it be?
Well, it is a subjective sport. It will always be. That's never going to change. But if there was a way that we could make it more fair, I don't know if there is one, but I think as athletes, we struggle because we really don't ever know what the judges truly want. And it tends to vary every year, tends to vary every competition. And so you may get judges' feedback in one competition, take that to heart, make those changes, go into your next competition, and the judges are looking for something different. So I don't know if there's a way to resolve that. It would be wonderful if we had full disclosure and a committee of some sort to oversee everything. But that's an ideal world.
Well, I always said they should do it like they did when I was doing like showcases for baseball, where I'd go to colleges and try out. What they do is they'd fill out like your report or whatever, and then they'd send you it in the mail, and you get it like a month later, and it would show like everything that you did, like what your speed was for your pitches, stuff that they wanted you to work on, how all that stuff was, and they'd grade you. If they could just do that, where at least you'd know like specifically, like, oh hey, you need to work on your arms a little bit more. Oh hey, your leg was a little bit underdeveloped, so you might want to work on that a little bit. If they could just do that and have like an evaluation, I think that things would be so much better. But yeah, that is the number one thing that I hear of all the time too, and I couldn't agree with it more. But one thing that I find that's specifically one of the reasons why I thought female bodybuilding would be a great subject to have guests on is because I think it's one of those few sports where the athletes generally do care about each other and they generally do have each other's back. Because I mean, if you look on Instagram, you see all these messages, especially with any bodybuilder making a post, female bodybuilder, that's like, "Oh my God, you look amazing, keep it up," and it's coming from their competitors. In most other sports, you wouldn't hear that, and I always find, it's kind of like since you guys all suffer together and you go through these preps, you all know what it takes to get on that stage, that it's really created this bond. And how important is that bond to you, knowing that, I mean, even the people that you're competing against really do have your back and care about you?
I mean, this is not a team sport, but it does feel like a team sport. You know, we're all up there together. We definitely know each other's pain. The One of the fun things about going to shows is making new friends and seeing old friends, and then watching their journeys and continuing to sort of keep in touch. Um, and we need to support each other only because if we're not supporting each other, then who is? It's a tough industry, and it's just nice to know that when you're standing next to the next Olympian, that she's congratulating you as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's such a great thing to witness. And I mean, that's why I think I generally, enjoy the sport and think that more people should get into it, because yeah, the athletes do they do love each other. And I mean, it just that camaraderie that you see is unprecedented in a lot of sports. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, what are some goals that you would like to have achieved? What are you thinking of as, when it comes to competing this year? What are your plans?
So I do know that I'm going to be attempting the St. Louis Pro in April. Um, I haven't looked at the schedule yet to see what other shows are an option for me. But last year I ended up competing towards the end of the year, and I did not get in front of the judges early enough. So my goal this year is to try to get some shows in early, and in order for the judges to sort of see me. So hopefully 2 to 3 shows. My body tends to quit after certain number of shows. I know there's some girls who can do 5, 6, 7 shows, no problem. I don't want to use my age as an excuse. It could be an age thing. I don't know. But there's a point where my body says, you're done for the year, and I have to listen to it no matter what my mind wants to tell me to do, because it wants me to keep competing, keep showing up, keep trying to push. And in the end, though, it's your body that you have to listen to.
Yeah. And that's so great that I mean, that that, because so many people, even if they've competed for so many years, they don't know their body still that well, and they still try to overachieve things. And then, like you said, that adds to injury. Your career can be cut short, permanent damage. So it's really great that you have that. But now the last question, I mean, we are a couple weeks removed from New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and I mean, owning a gym, that must be like your hell month, basically. This must be because all the New Year's resolutioners come in, and I love that people try to attain their goals and such, but I just get sad knowing that, I mean, there's been studies where it's only like 15 to 20% of people with New Year's resolutions achieve them, because a lot of people don't plan ahead of time. They just walk into the gym and say, "Oh, hey, I want to get in shape," and then after 2 weeks, they're like, "Oh, this hurts. I don't want to do this anymore." So then they quit. But what advice do you like to have for clients coming in with New Year's resolutions, or just trying to start their journey so that it's sustainable for them? Because so many times people just walk in it and then they're out, within a couple of weeks, and they nothing's really changed.
Yeah, small bites. It's great to have big, lofty goals, but you got to break those down into small bites. And a day at a time. I know that sounds corny, but it's so true. And I think also too, deprivation never works. So trying to deprive yourself and kill yourself for a few weeks is never going to be successful. So finding something that works with your lifestyle, finding something that you can sustain, finding things that you enjoy and are fulfilling, and then making your goals very manageable, and then having someone that you're accountable to.
Yeah, that deprivation never works unless you want to be like one of those people where you can put like you can go like this around their arm basically, and then you can like get the whole thing. So yeah, and I've tried everything myself. You know, I've made so many mistakes, and I've also made some great things. So it is just so much trial and error. But now, lastly, where can people find this gym of yours if they're in the Kansas City area? I mean, I bet we'll have some listeners in there. And how can people get a hold of you if they want maybe some nutrition advice or lifestyle coaching?
So my gym's called JQ's Beef at 2. We're located in Overland Park, and have a great website you can go to. Email me, JQ at jqsbeefat2.com, with questions, with information that you may need. I'm very willing to share. I'm sort of not one of those individuals who worries about sharing too much. I'm one of those individuals who believes that educating is just the key. So if you need help and support, I'm definitely here to give it to you. So reach out. Absolutely reach out.
That's awesome. I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. Now, lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Um, Probably I should, just because I think he would feel left out if I didn't. But I want to give a shout out to my husband, Gary. He's
I was gonna say, yeah, if you didn't, that would be like, okay, what? Come on now, yeah.
He deserves it too, because he's the one that's left holding the bag a lot of times when I'm competing and prepping, and he basically is been a rock and supported me through thick and thin. So,
Please tell me that you make him be your videographer for like your workout videos that you put on Instagram and stuff.
no, he actually he doesn't get involved with that. He tends to be busy doing other things and taking care of things for me. But my workout buddies tend to be my videographer. So I actually need to give a shout out to them, Josh and Sam. They are great workout buddies, and they take the time to do some clips here and there for me, and I appreciate that so much. As much of a pain, it's got to be a pain for them. But they willingly do it. But no, my husband tends
Willingly do it.
yeah, but no, he is busy with other important things. So,
Well, and that's awesome that you have that support system, because that really does tend to help. But you mentioned it before. I couldn't think of a better way to end this podcast. What is your age?
47.
All right. Can you end it with another front double bicep so we can just say that she's 47 years old and she has bigger arms than everyone? Good.
If I must.
Good God, everyone. Come on.
So, so
I'm gonna stop doing this podcast now because it just embarrasses me too much. Now I gotta go and now I gotta go and work out 10 hours a day for the rest of my life just to catch up. But again, you guys, we cannot thank her enough for coming on the podcast and sharing her journey. And I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. And again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
well, thank you for the opportunity. It's not every day that I get to share my story with the individuals like yourself and your fans and the viewers. So thank you. I had an awesome time, very fun, and a little out of my comfort zone, but you made it very, very easy and relaxing. And so,
Well, as you can tell, I'm like one of the most talkative people of all time. So this is basically my therapy, just getting all my words out of the day. Because then if I do like 2 or 3 of these in a day, I'm just quiet the rest of the day. But yeah, I like and I just love having people come on and share their stories and helping to spread that positivity. So again, we cannot thank you enough. And everyone, like I said before, and I'll say it again, go and give her a follow. And as always, I mean, if you're looking to accomplish goals, I mean, I have guests on here that prove that anything is possible as long as you stick to it. And just remember, the only limitations are the ones that you put on yourself, unless you're dealt like a bad hand in life. Like, I mean, I have a brother who's left-handed in a lot of things, and so he struggles a lot. So I always say that, but no, yeah,
I'm definitely too, so I get that.
Well, here's the thing: I'm ambidextrous, though. That's the weird thing. So I'm one of those rare people where, yeah, I write left-handed, I throw right-handed. I can do all these different weird things. So yeah, I am one of the lucky ones. But again, you guys, this has been a great episode, and I really enjoyed it. And hopefully, when this comes out, the Chiefs have, they're either in the Super Bowl, or they've won the Super Bowl. But we'll see. I'm actually rooting for them. They're probably the one team because if I just want the Packers to lose by 50 tomorrow. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.